The 20% of Americans who make the least money in the country have not had a great 30 years. Since the late 1970s, the poorest Americans have seen their overall income go up just this much, which is not much progress in the richest country on earth. And that's sort of the big picture here. Look, over the last 30 years, the more you need your income to rise, the less it rises, right? So that's the bottom 20%, the second 20%, the middle 20%, right? The smallest gains in income over the last 3 decades have been among those who most need a gain in income. The people who least need it are getting the biggest boost year after year. This is new out today from the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, on what American money has been like in the last few decades. And this is a problem. I mean, the people who nobody needs to worry about because they are doing better than anybody else in the country, they are the ones who have seen their income rise the most. They are the ones who've been helped the most. Wait, hold on. What's that? I'm being told this is not the whole graph. This isn't the whole graph. So we got the bottom 20%, the next 20%, the middle 20%, the next 20%. So this part here that shows the richest people in the country, that's not the whole top 20%? That's not the whole thing? Okay, this part here that shows how much better off rich people are, how much better off rich people are doing in terms of their income, that apparently only goes up to the 99%. We are missing the top percent. The graph is not complete. So if you want to know how the richest 1% of the country, the people who least need a pay raise in the country, how they've done over the last 30 years, we actually have to break that out separately because it distorts all these other numbers. Can we do that? Can we do that? Oh, yeah. Okay. Whoa. That's just the top 1%. Income going like this in general, that is already a problem because that means that poorer people are doing worse over time compared to richer people. And that's already a problem. That's already backwards. But this isn't just a problem. This is actually a whole new idea. Okay, graph time. It's actually get up and run to the big graph time. May I stand here? Okay. Ezra Klein made this. And this explains the whole big new idea in America. This is actually a map of the hole in the American dream. This is actually a map of the hole the American dream fell down, never to be heard from again. So this section here, okay? This section here, the late 1940s, around the end of World War II, okay? To the mid-1980s, to Ronald Reagan time. We got a lot of new economic policies starting Ronald Reagan time. That time, from about the end of World War II, through to Ronald Reagan time, that is the American dream. This distance here, this is the American dream. Because this blue line is median income in America. And yeah, it wobbles a little bit, but it's basically going up. It is on a fairly steady climb. And this other line, this line is the income growth of the top 1%, the richest people in the country. Now, their income from the end of World War II up until Reagan time is growing, but it is not growing as fast as the income of the rest of the country. And that's good, right? They're already doing great. They are the top 1%. They are already the richest people in the country. During the period that we can call the American dream, the richest 1% of the country is still rich, and in fact is getting richer over time. But they are not pulling away from the rest of the country. In fact, everybody is moving on up together. Yay for rich people, and yay for everybody else, too. But then starting here, starting in the mid-1980s, starting in Reagan time, it flips around. And the people who are already the richest 1% of the country, they cross over, and they take off running. Getting richer way faster than everybody else, leaving everybody else behind. This is new. The red line being on top of the blue line, this is new. This is a new thing in America. The American dream was anybody can make it. That is no longer the dream. If you already have made it, sure, you can make it to the stratosphere. But if you are not already up in that top 1%, you are not going anywhere. That is new. That's not the way America used to be. And you know why that is? And you know what that is? That's policy. Policy matters. The CBO, in mapping this change over the last 30 years, where the top 1% richest people in the country have doubled their share of our national income, explained today that what has done this is policy. What happened to the American dream? Well, over these past 30 years, quote, the equalizing effect of federal taxes was smaller. Taxes stopped equalizing the benefits of living in our American economy and instead just started shoveling all the benefits up to the people who already had the most money. And the private sector followed suit. Frankly, executive pay went through the roof. Workers' pay, not so much. And again, this is not something that has been happening gradually over the lifespan of America as a country. This is something that's been happening gradually over the lifespan of me. This is something that has just happened in the last generation. This is a new thing in America. And if you ask Americans, Americans do not like it. The new New York Times CBS poll says 2/3 of Americans want wealth and income to be distributed more evenly in our country. 66% say they want that. Incidentally, there's also some really, really partisan news in that poll as well. When you ask Americans about whose interests the Obama administration is acting in, it's pretty evenly divided among people who think he's favoring the rich, favoring the poor, favoring the middle class, or treating everybody equally. But if you ask Americans that same question about Republicans in Congress, you get a very, very strikingly partisan answer. Only 9% of people think that Republican policies help the middle class. 69% of people say Republican policies, the policies of Republicans in Congress, help the rich. And again, the rich are doing great, really great. The rich are doing greater than they've ever done, ever. So today, waking up to this new data in the newspaper, the Republican Party put out its congressional budget guy, Congressman Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, famous for his kill Medicare budget, right? Which a huge majority of Republicans voted for in Congress. To say that they put Paul Ryan out today on the day that this news breaks. To say that Democrats right now pushing more populist economic policies. Democrats wanting to repeal the Bush tax cuts for the richest people. Democrats, including President Obama, criticizing Republican policies for just helping the rich. Paul Ryan out today saying today that with that kind of rhetoric, Democrats are dividing the country.
Sowing social unrest and class resentment makes America weaker. The president is barnstorming swing states, pushing a divisive message that pits one group of Americans against another on the basis of class.
It is true that Americans are divided on the basis of class. The class division is between the top 1% and everybody else. But saying that, describing that, naming that truth, making a picture of it, saying that maybe we should try to fix that, that is not what has created the division. This division is real. It's new, and it is a shocking affront to the American dream. You know, a Goldman Sachs guy got arrested today. A guy who used to be a Goldman Sachs board member surrendered to the FBI today. He's connected to the guy from that billionaire hedge fund who got sentenced to 11 years in prison this month. There is a crackdown on illegal activity on Wall Street right now. But it's not a crackdown on the Wall Street activity you're thinking of. This guy who turned himself in today, he says he's not guilty. The Galleon billionaire hedge fund guy, that guy who just got sentenced, they got in trouble, or alleged trouble as the case may be for the guy who turned himself in today. But they got in trouble for an insider trading scheme. The same thing essentially that sent like Martha Stewart to prison, right? But the overall accountability issue of not just Wall Street crimes like we have always known, but the overall accountability issue of what Wall Street did when they blew up the entire economy, when they caused the man-made recession that we are in, which came from nowhere but Wall Street and the banks, that nobody has gotten in trouble for. That has all been negotiations and settlements and bailouts and back to bonuses. The only investigation into whether or not the biblical levels of irresponsibility on Wall Street might also have been criminal, the only investigation of that is being done by the states, by these crusading liberal attorneys general like Eric Schneiderman of New York, who we had on the show last night, and also Beau Biden, the attorney general in Delaware, who we hope to have on this show tomorrow. These are the guys who are trying to figure out if anybody else ought to be dragged off of Wall Street in handcuffs for what they did to this country. Not for some typical Wall Street insider trading, white-collar crime, but for what happened at the end of the Bush presidency that blew up this economy and from which we still have not recovered. But so far that hasn't happened. And so you've got these two huge things in American politics, these two basic truths. We are grinding through the worst thing we have been through since the Great Depression. And it was man-made. It was man-made. It was a catastrophe caused by specific people screwing it up, knowingly, recklessly, in a way that did not hurt them at all, but really hurt us as a country. We've got that. And at the same time, the mega class that those guys are from, they really did shrink the American dream down to the size where they could drown it in a bathtub, and then they drowned it. Economic policies that benefit the very, 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 very richest people in this country allowed the very, very richest people in this country to run off with all of the spoils in this entire past generation, leaving everybody else behind. Republicans who still support those policies for the very, very richest people, they say now that two-thirds of Americans say something is wrong here. Republicans are now saying that if you think something's wrong here, you ought to shut up and stop being so divisive. Be happy with what you've got. We need to keep helping rich people, and maybe help them some more. Democrats, of course, are left trying to figure out how to politically capitalize on this, how to take the side of the 99%, since Republicans are taking the side of the 1%. But frankly, the biggest issue facing our country is not the politics of this. The biggest issue facing our country is whether this can be fixed materially.